I nodded, but I only half understood what she was trying to say. It takes a lot of years before young folks can really catch on to what their mamas and papas tell them when they're young. At first, like I said, I just told stories to my little brother Samuel, and I never had much thought about writing anything down. I loved to listen to the yarns the old slaves would spin around our nightly fires, and I'd tell Sammy those stories too, sometimes adding stuff of my own to them. I especially liked the ones about Mr. Rabbit and Mr. Fox. They were my favorites of the old tales. I didn't even know how to write when I listened to the first stories and started passing them on to Sammy. But by the time I was 10 or so, Mama had taught me to write. It was uncommon the way she knew how to read and write. Not many slaves had schooling. In fact, lots of their owners got real nervous about slaves learning things like that. But she'd been born to a house slave, and when she was little, she listened when the master's children were getting their lessons. She sure didn't get her hands on books too often, but when she did, she ate up the words like she was starving for them. Anyway, Mama started to bring me every scrap of paper she could find, most of the time taking wrappings from the trash heap and cutting them all down to the same size. Then I started to write things down, kind of like a diary, I reckon, and ideas for made-up stories, too. Keeping my diary on those scraps of paper we collected, just like Mama said, helped me through some hard times, and helped me remember things it was important to remember. So that's how my storytelling all got started. Right now I'm holding a special leather-bound diary in my hands that's nearly as old as I am. How I came to have such a special keepsake is something that's an important part of what I'll be telling you. But for now, you should know I've written down things in it from some of those long-ago pieces of paper. And it sure is going to help me remember important events of my life that I want to tell you about. I've got something else in front of me as I write. It's small and blue and white and gold, but I can't describe it more than that without telling how it came to be, and I'd be getting ahead of myself to do that just yet. But these two things, along with my Mama's Bible, are all I have left from those days way back then. Putting all those memories into words is going to take every ounce of energy and clear thinking I can muster. So I've got the diary and my memory, such as it is, to help me piece together the events as well as the thoughts, and especially the feelings, that shaped my life and Katie's. Just hang in there with me for a minute, and I'll explain who Katie was. The particular time I've been talking about, I must have been maybe 6 or 7, and of course that was before I was writing anything down. My brother was born about 3 years after me, so that would have made him 3 or 4, which is probably the age when an older sister starts telling a young'un stories. If that's when I told my first story, that would be more years ago than you likely can imagine, especially some of you who think even 30 or 40 is old. I'm not planning to tell you exactly how old I am, but the fact is, I've done a lot of living since my earliest storytelling days. I remember the first time I ever saw an automobile, and land sakes, I was petrified and fascinated all at the same time. When the new century arrived, I was still living in Shenandoah County, and by then it was one thing after another, telephones and cameras and electricity and whatnot, that were all announcing themselves faster than I could catch my breath. So it's probably not hard to see why I have a difficult time remembering exact dates of things. And if you ask me about any of those stories that I told Samuel, I'd answer that I could no more recall them than I can tell you what happened on the day I was born. You are probably wondering what has made me want to go back and relive that life back in Shenandoah County, North Carolina, especially when some of those days were pretty awful. Well, something has happened that will explain why I'm digging around in my past, mine and Katie's. But anyway, I can't quite recollect exactly how all those stories from my little brother got into my head, which ones I heard from other black storytellers, and which ones I made up. I think some of them got mixed up with the old slave songs, too, because we all love to sing. And sometimes, when I sing those songs now, I seem to be able to recollect things right clearly. But gradually those early years of my life are slowly fading away, kind of like I'm looking off in the distance on a cold, sunny winter morning, when the fog gets thicker and thicker, until you can't make out anything at all. That's how it is when I try to think of Samuel now. Memory's a funny thing. Some bits of it come back easier than others. Sometimes I can remember something that happened when I was 7 better than what happened yesterday. But what I remember most clearly starts when I was 15. That's how old I was when I first laid eyes on Katie. I can't help thinking of those years and the changes this world's seen since way back then. That's what folks call nostalgia. Recollecting back on times from another era, when the world was a different sort of place. Lots of stories, lots of memories come into my mind. Good memories, happy memories, and sad memories too. And some even full of terror, because those were as hard times as anyone would ever want to live through. I've probably told Katie my stories too, at first to keep her mind off being afraid. But I never dreamed the story that folks eventually would ask me about most was my own and Katie's. It's not just a story. It's what truly happened. We weren't so very different from any two other girls, except, of course, that one of us was white and the other colored, and that we lived together through the last part of the war between the states. Nowadays, I know some folks take offense at calling black folks colored, though I can't myself see what all the fuss is about. I reckon they think it's an insulting word, and that we ought to call ourselves black, though I'm not actually black, just a nice dark brown. Yes, I do think of it as nice. It's how the good Lord made me, and since He is good, and He said His creation was good, my skin color must be nice. Back then we even called each other niggers, though everybody's all up in arms about that word, too. Seems a little silly to me. A word is just a word, to my way of thinking. One word's as good or as bad as the other. What matters is who you are, not what folks call you. What we lived through back then, Katie and me, was a lot more important than what we were called. No better or no worse than being called white trash, I suppose. What I was saying is that because Katie and I were white and black, once we got used to it, the difference between us made us even closer. Not because we got to be the same, but just because we were different. But we were different in more ways than the color of our skin. Something about contrasts makes people stronger, I think. That's sure how it worked in our case. Years later, when we got older, Katie and I couldn't even sit together on the train. She sat in front with the white folks. I sat in the colored section. That kind of thing riles a lot of black folks, and I understand that. But for my part, I can't get too upset about it. It's just the way it was. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but it was, and I didn't figure it was my job to fight it. I've got a little different view than most about all that. Laws can be passed to help even things out,